Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us to this international webinar that is part of Management and Sustainability and Arab Review Journal Seminar Series. MSAR had been launched 6 months ago and intends to set a research base that broadly relates management and sustainability with reference to Arab countries in specific. And we are happy today to have an international webinar that is discussing a prominent methodology, which is systematic literature reviews. And we are honored today to be having Professor Nisar Ahmed. Professor Nisar had obtained his master and PhD in economics from Aarhus University in Denmark. He worked at the University of Southern Denmark as a postdoctorate assistant and associate professor for 5 years. He is currently working as an associate professor at the Department of Economics and Finance at Sultan Qaboos University in Oman. Recently has published his works in well-reputed international journals such as the Journal of Macroeconomics, International Migration, Energy Economics, Journal of Economic Surveys, and Journal of Labor Research, Econometrics, Theory, Behavioral Economics, and Microeconomics. Webinar is we are very fortunate to have Dr. Nisar with us. I also want to say that Dr. Nisar had published a very nice article at our inaugural issue, which is online and the MSAR website by Emerald Publishing. And it had been downloaded in the 2 weeks that it had been online more than 200 times till now. So we are very happy to be having this webinar. I think it's going to be very useful to PhD students and potential authors for the journal. Having said that, we are currently open for submissions at MSAR. So if you have a research that has to do with management and sustainability in Arab countries, please get in touch with me, and please, we are happy to submit it online, and we are happy to have that research. So without further ado, I will leave the floor now to Professor Nisar for the webinar. Professor Nisar, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noah, for giving me this opportunity to present this seminar.
Their mic, I will answer everyone now.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much once again, and I'm very happy that you gave me this opportunity to present this seminar to the PhD students. And so, as you can see, my title of presentation is an introduction to systematic literature review, and of course, it can be very helpful if you are planning to publish your work in good journals. Okay, so let me first go through my agenda for today. So I will be first talking about, and it is actually a brainstorming session, which I will be doing along with you to talk about how to publish in good journals. And after that, I will be telling you what do we mean by literature review, and what are different types of literature review available, and what is the difference between a traditional literature review and a systematic literature review. And nowadays, due to these new databases, we are able to do this citation-based systematic literature review, which is, if you go back 10 years, you won't be able to do citation analysis, but now it's very easy and you can do it. And I will give you some of the recent studies, which has been, some of them of my own studies, and some studies are actually just to motivate you about systematic literature review. And finally, I will also tell you how to, what is the process of conducting a systematic literature review. And of course, this is an introductory seminar. I cannot go into more details, but later on, if you are interested, we can do another workshop where I can actually tell you how to conduct each and every step in doing systematic literature review. So now I would like to ask you to please join this, communication channel, which is VVox app. So if you can scan this with your mobile phone, or if you can write in your mobile phone this B box in Google, you will immediately go to this website, and then I will be asking you a few questions, and you can answer me by using this app. So it's very easy. Just scan this QR code or go to the V box in Google search. And once you are in this website, it will ask you for the ID, and you can give this number there, 163-818 and 004. Okay, so if you're ready for, then I can move on. Okay, so my first question is, can you please tell me about yourself, if you are a PhD student or if you are a faculty member? And now you should be able to see the question on your mobile devices or computer. Okay, very good. Most of you are PhD students, which is very, very good. Actually, these systematic literature views are very useful for your dissertation. It will give you a very good idea about what is happening in that particular topic you are working. So let me ask you the next question. So what are your feelings about this seminar, your expectations? And you can reply by, choosing an emoji from your device or mobile phone. Okay, so let us see your expectations. Okay, very good. So you are excited, and I can see some faces, which is very good. So let us start. And I would like to start by asking you about what is a contribution in an academic paper. This is very, very important question. Whenever you submit your paper to a journal, the first question the editors or the reviewers will ask you is, what is your contribution? Even though you have written it in your introduction, but they still would like to hear more about your contribution. And you can now reply, you can answer, but remember that please use dash in between the words. If you have more than one word, please use dash, because space is not working properly. So if your reply is more than 2 words, please use dash in between. And my question is, what is a contribution in an academic paper? And maximum 20 alphabets are allowed. So you have to be very precise in your reply. Okay, so let us see your answers. Okay, so the contribution means a novel research, summarizing the model, new findings, new theory. Yes, so all of these points are very relevant. Whenever you are writing about your contribution, you have to tell how novel is your research. Are you able to provide some new findings, or are you developing a new theory? And also there is a very good research paper which is actually talking about a contribution, and they actually said that contribution is or can be expressed in terms of this contribution continuum, where if you are, for example, doing a straight replication of something which has been done for some other countries, then of course it's a straight replication, so the contribution is very low. So we give it, or they say that its contribution level is 1. And then sometime, of course, you can do replication, and if at the same time you are adding some value or you are extending that model that has been applied, for example, in the US, you are going to apply it in your country, but you're also adding something, or you are extending the model. So that becomes level 2 contribution. And if you are talking about level 3, then they say that it is an extension of a new method, or it is an extension of new theory in that particular area. And then if they say that if you do an integrative review, for example, if you do a meta-analysis, or if you do a systematic review, then it is actually a level 4 contribution. So that is why nowadays it is very useful way to publish paper as well, and with very good contribution. And if you so on, if level 5 contribution means that you are developing a new theory and you are trying to explain an existing phenomena with the help of that theory. Or level 6 contribution means identification of a new phenomena. Number 7 means develop a grand synthesis, or doing an integration of something. And finally, a very, very high contribution means that you are developing a new theory that predicts a new phenomena. Okay, so these are different types of contributions explained by this paper, and this is very, very important. If you want to publish in a good journal, you have to specify what contribution you are bringing in that particular area. But now the important question is that how do you figure out the level of contribution in your research? This is very, very important. How do you find, or how do you know what is the contribution of your paper? So again, let us see, what do you think about it? So now you can answer, and you have to tell me, how do you figure out level of contribution? So please reply. Okay, so let us see your replies. Okay, so contribution, to identify how much is the level of contribution, of course, you have to do a literature, you have to study the literature. That is very, very important. And of course, you have to compare your model with other people who has done it, or, with some time, I don't know what exactly this means, journal acceptance. Of course, if you are making a contribution, then people has to agree with that. So this is, taking us to the next point, which is and we agree that the contribution, in order to answer what is the contribution, we need to have a very good understanding of the literature, and we specifically have to tell what has been done on this topic and what has not been done on this topic. And of course, to answer these three questions, you have to do a literature review, or you have to understand the literature very well. And of course, a very good foundation of a research paper is actually depending upon thorough understanding of the literature. So let me now briefly talk about what is literature review. So basically, the literature review is actually an account of what has been published on that particular topic by other researchers, okay, the researchers who published before you. So this is basically the definition of literature review. And why do we do a literature review? Of course, if you are a PhD student, then you have to provide a very, very good literature review. And of course, if your literature review is flawed, then of course the remainder of your thesis will be flawed as well. So this is very important for our PhD students, to provide a very good overview of the previous studies. And then you also do a literature review as a part of an empirical paper. Whenever you do an empirical analysis, you have to provide a literature review, what has been done on this topic before you, and what are the missing elements there, what are the gaps there, and then on the basis of that, you provide, or you try to fill those gaps. And we do it in every empirical paper. And then, the third thing is that you can do a full research paper itself on a literature review, or only based on literature review. So these are different purposes of doing literature reviews. And what are the major types of literature review? There is one which is a narrative review or traditional literature review. Like, usually people do this when they are doing an empirical paper. So they include a narrative literature review. And what do we mean by it? It means that you are providing summary, you are providing critical analysis, or evaluate and clarify the ideas that has been presented by other authors. So this is, how we do narrative style literature review. And then we have meta-analysis. And what is meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is actually is based on the results of the previous studies. So you collect all the empirical results from the previous studies, and then you try to analyze and try to explain what is coming out of so many different studies, empirical studies. So that is called meta-analysis. And then we also have these systematic literature review, which are now becoming very common. And let me give you a definition for systematic literature review. So systematic literature review is with a very well-defined research question. It has a very well-defined search process. There will be some data extraction involved from each study, and then also you will have to present that in the form of a paper. Okay, so this is basically a definition of systematic literature review. And now I would like to ask you about how do you select papers when you are doing a literature review? Okay, how do you find articles which are relevant for you? So now you can answer again. How do you find articles for your literature review? Okay, so let us see. Okay, so you are searching articles in Scopus database, you search online, you search in journals, Google Scholar, and there are many different ways, and all of them are very good source of finding relevant articles. And this is how we start reviewing the previous literature. And then my next question to you is that how many papers you think are enough for a good literature review? 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever you think is suitable number for doing a literature review. Okay, so most of you said that 50 papers is a good number. And, but again, this is very subjective. This is one of the problem when we do a traditional literature review, is that we have our own judgment about how many papers should be included in literature review. But when we are doing a systematic literature review, we have to actually define an exclusion and inclusion criteria. Okay, so it's no more subjective. It is actually a full process. And this is very, very important part of doing a literature review, systematic literature review, that you have to define, inclusion and exclusion criteria. You have to define where you are searching your article. And then, you can, if you are only working with quality of a particular type, then of course you have to define it in your search process. And I will show you in a moment about that. But one thing which is very clear here, that if you just do a traditional literature review, then it can be very subjective. Some people will be happy with 20 papers, other will be happy with 40 papers, and some people would only maybe like to go to 100 papers, but it is very subjective. And as I mentioned earlier, that now we also can do citation-based systematic literature review. And I would like to explain you the difference between a systematic literature review and a citation-based systematic literature review. And basically, these systematic literature reviews are actually conducted, or one of the main methodology in this systematic literature review is content analysis. Okay. So what do we do in content analysis? We actually, for example, find out that what is the main methodology being used in earlier literature. So we extract the content of methodology from each paper, and then we can find out what is the widely used methodology in that particular area. But if we are combining it with citation analysis, then it becomes even more interesting. And then we call it a citation-based systematic literature review. So what we can answer in using citation? So with content analysis, we can find out what methodologies has been widely used, but with the help of citation analysis, we can also find out what is the most influential methodology, what methodology is getting more citation. So it becomes even more interesting due to the help of these citation database and citation analysis. And let me now talk about some of the other advantages of doing a systematic literature review. The first one is that you don't have to be an expert in order to do a systematic literature review. If you are doing a traditional literature review, of course, you need a lot of knowledge. And usually the journals will not let anyone or new researchers to publish a traditional literature review because it requires a lot of background knowledge and expertise. But if you are doing a systematic literature review, you can even do without having a good background. And this is very important for PhD students. Why? Because you are starting, or you're working in a new field or in a new research area. And but the good thing is that you can still do a systematic literature review. And also, if you are a new researcher, or if you are starting your research after a long gap, then I think it's a very good idea to do a systematic literature review. And as I already mentioned, that it is more objective and it is less prone to biases and errors. For example, if you are doing a traditional literature review, so the traditional literature review of one person will be very different, can be from another researcher. Why? Because maybe the one researcher is using another set of articles for review, and another researcher is doing another set of articles to provide the literature review. So the traditional literature review can be subjective and it can be different from one researcher to another researcher. But as far as the systematic literature review is concerned, it is very objective. You know, if you follow the same selection criteria of articles, you will be ending up doing the same analysis. And of course, in systematic literature review, you provide very clear description of the method used. You very explicitly provide the inclusion and exclusion criteria of articles in your study. And then you also identify the quality of the primary studies. And you know, anybody who follows your step, he can also replicate your results and he can verify your review. So these are the advantages of systematic literature review. And let me now give you some examples of systematic literature review just to motivate you about this kind of reviews. So this is actually a paper which is published in Omega, and it's a very highly valuable or influential journal. And somebody did this research on data envelopment analysis, and they did a citation-based systematic literature review. And why I bring this paper, because you see this usually these systematic literature review gets a lot of citations. So this paper has received 686 citations and it is published in 2013. So this is very good motivation for you to do a systematic literature review. And let me then show you another paper, which is one of my mentor. I learned this methodology from Dr. Irfan Bhatt, who was our colleague, but now he left for Canada. He's working in a very good university in Canada. And this paper has been published in a very good journal, and their review article, they have reviewed 506 published articles, and it is published in a Q1 and ABDC ranked A journal, which is very good ranking. So, but I would like to ask you, how many pages are in this paper? Just a guess. Of course, you didn't see this paper before, but I want you to guess how many pages they have published in this paper. So you can again answer now by using the VVOX system. I need just a guess. Okay, let us see if you are right. Okay, so you guessed maximum 30, but let me tell you that this paper has been published with 95 pages. Okay. And I can tell you, Dr. Irfan told me the story of it, that when they submitted this paper to this journal, when it is being sent to the reviewers, the reviewers refused to review it because, they said it is too long, 95 pages. So nobody was agreed to review it. But then the editor was very much interested in the paper and he did review himself. And then this paper was published with 95 pages. Okay, so this is just to show you that these papers are sometimes very interesting and editors are very much interested to publish systematic literature reviews. And let me now tell you one more thing. This is another paper by using the same set of article. So you see manufacturing studies strategy. In the previous one, they were looking at the methodological part of manufacturing strategy, but in this paper, they were trying to explain the publication trends. Okay? And again, this paper is being published in a very good journal with 62 pages. And it is done with the same set of articles. So this is another advantage of doing a systematic literature review, is that once you select the sample of articles, then you can look at many different dimensions of the same article. So they published another paper by using the same set of articles. And this is, my paper on first paper on systematic literature review. I started it in 2017, and then I managed to publish my first paper in 2020. But you know why it took so long? Because at that time, some of the softwares were not available, and we did many things manually. And for example, we have to collect data from different search engines. For example, Business Source, we selected articles from ProQuest, we selected article or searched article from Science Direct, and then we combined them into one place. We have to remove duplicates, and then we need to bring the citation information, and it takes a lot of time. And because at that time, these Scopus database, we didn't know about that, Web of Science. So it took us a very long time to actually search the article and combine them into one platform. But nowadays it's very easy, because now there are many different softwares available which can do many things for you. The things which we have done for this paper in 3 months, now we can do it in 3 hours. So now it has been greatly improved because of the new software. So in this paper, we reviewed 1041 papers, and we published in Energy Economics, which is A-star ranked in ABDC. And then recently I published another paper in Energy Economics, and it is again, we did a systematic literature review on energy convergence, and we just submitted to this Energy Economics, and then the editor immediately sent it for review, and we published it very quickly. And then I would like to tell you a story about this paper, which I published in Journal of Economic Survey, and I published it along with Dr. Angeliki from Greece, and we finished the draft in 1 month compared to my first paper, which took more than 2 years. I published, we made this draft ready in 1 month, and then it has been rejected, of course, by some journals because of the scope of this paper. But then Journal of Economic Survey accepted it very quickly with a very quick review. So you see that nowadays, if you want to do a systematic literature review, it can be very quick. And I will be explaining the process of systematic literature review using this paper. And this paper, actually, we did it with one of our PhD student, and she was visiting us from Uzbekistan. She visited here for a couple of months, and then we motivated her to do a systematic literature review, and she agreed, and we were able to publish it also in a very, very good journal, which is Journal of International Development, about the foreign aid and its impact on economic development. So let me now explain you the process of conducting a citation-based systematic literature review. And of course, it will be, again, an introductory, I cannot go into a lot of details. And but if you want later on, I can do a full workshop, maybe online or face-to-face, where I can actually show you how to use different software and how to conduct all these things. So systematic literature review actually starts with the topic selection, and this is the most important part of it. And nowadays I spend much time on topic selection, because if your topic selection is good, then of course it will be easy for you to publish it later on. And when you are searching, after you have selected your topic, you search keywords in different databases, and you find out all the relevant articles. Then you export these articles into some softwares now, and you can use Excel, and you can also use RStudio. And you can do, and then we do citation analysis. We then also do the content analysis, and content analysis starts with data entry into the Excel sheet, and then you finally do the data analysis and you do the write-up. So these are the main steps involved in this, conducting a systematic literature review. And let me go one by one to each of this process, or each of this step. And the first thing is topic selection. And in topic selection, you have to be very careful that you are not choosing a topic which is very, very broad. And of course, at the same time, you don't want to choose a topic which is very, very narrow. For example, if you choose a very, very broad topic, then of course, there will be many articles, and it will be very difficult to present anything from there. Let me give you an example. If you search, for example, you say that you want to do a paper on tourism. So then it will be, there will be, if you search tourism in Scopus database, or for example, if you search it in Google Scholar, you will find many, many articles which are talking about tourism. So it's a very, very broad area. So you shouldn't be choosing a topic which is very broad. And on the other hand, if you choose a topic, for example, tourism and growth nexus in Oman, or for example, in your country, so then it will be very narrowed, because maybe there is no paper on tourism growth nexus in Oman or in another particular country. So you don't want to take a very broad topic or a very narrow topic. So what do you have to choose? You have to choose a topic which is relatively relatively easy to analyze, and it has enough articles to work with. For example, in our case, we wanted to look at tourism growth nexus. So where you are trying to select all the studies which have studied the relationship between tourism and economic growth. And there is a very well-known hypothesis in this literature where people try to find out if the tourism is causing economic growth, or if it is economic growth which is causing tourism, which is very, very well researched area. And in our study, we found approximately 284 articles which we worked with. And then, you should be also careful about if you want to work with a mature topic, or if you are working with an emerging topic. You can work with both type of papers. If it is a mature topic, of course, it will be very good to provide what has been done and what are the outcomes of this literature. And also you can choose between an emerging topic. For example, a mature topic could be tourism growth nexus, but an emerging topic could be what happens to tourism after COVID-19. So again, you have to think about it, which one will be more acceptable later on for publication. And of course, your expertise in the topic are very important. If you are having good expertise, then it will of course help you in writing up the paper. But as I mentioned earlier, that you can also work on a completely new topic. And this is also very important, that you choose a topic which you are planning to work in the future. Okay, then you will get a very good background on that topic by doing a systematic literature review. And of course, if you are a PhD student, then if you do a systematic literature review, then it will help you to identify the gaps for your future empirical or quantitative papers. And also you have to find a topic where you think that journal will be interested. And if you look at that aspect, then of course it will help you to publish it later on in reputed journals. And then the next step in the systematic literature review is to search article. And we can search article by searching in the title of the articles. We can search by looking into the abstract, and we can also do it by searching in keywords. And there are different databases available. For example, you can search in Scopus database, which has approximately 22,000, more than 22,000 journals listed in there. And we also have Web of Science. And in Web of Science, you know that they have very stricter criteria compared to Scopus. And number of journals in Web of Science is approximately 13,000. And you can also search other database, for instance, Business Source Complete, ProQuest, or Science Direct. The main difference between the Scopus and Web of Science and the third one is that in Scopus and Web of Science, you have the citation information, like how many times a paper has been cited in Scopus and how many times a paper has been cited in Web of Science journals. But if you are using Business Source Complete, if you are using ProQuest or Science Direct, you don't have the citation information. So you have to manually collect citation information. But what is the advantage of Business Source Complete or ProQuest or Science Direct is that you can search the full body text. So in Scopus and Web of Science, you can only search in title, abstract, and keywords to find the relevant documents. But in Business Source or in ProQuest or Science Direct, you can search the full document to find the relevant articles. So they have both pros and cons. And then you have to find the relevant keywords which are needed to identify the relevant articles or to extract the relevant articles. And of course, you need the discussions or the views of the expert to talk about what keywords you have to search. And of course, if you have a previous literature reviews or systematic literature review, you can also get guidelines about finding the relevant keywords to search your documents. For example, in Tourism Growth Nexus, we searched articles by these keys or these keywords. So we searched in the title, abstract, and keyword by writing Tourism Growth Nexus with dash, tourism-led growth. So there are many different ways and names used for this in this literature. So we have to include everything there. And we searched the articles in Scopus database, which is available to us. Web of Science, we don't have. So this is, you start your search by writing your, keywords into the database. And for example, in the start, it gave us 1,447 article. Then of course, you have to limit it by subject area, and you also limit it to the journal articles, and then you also apply some other filtrations. And you actually have to, once you finalize your documents, you have to export, and many different platforms are available to export your article, and then you can use it into other softwares for your analysis. And you have to document the whole process. For example, you started by searching these words, and then you added other words, and you see here that numbers of articles are increasing if you add more keywords. But then you, for example, say that you only look for journal articles, so you removed books, conference papers, and conference proceeding. You also removed, for example, non-English language articles. And if, for example, at that time when we searched, 2020 was not complete, so we removed the articles from 2020. And then we also removed the irrelevant articles by manually checking the abstract and title, which is very important, because sometimes when you are searching articles, it can give you some irrelevant articles and you don't want to include them. So in case of Tourism Growth Nexus paper, we found our final sample consisted of 284 articles. And as I mentioned earlier, that now you can work with these very good softwares and developed by different researchers. So this is a software which is developed by this website, bibliometrics.org. So you can follow their step, you can download, they have a lot of documentation available. There are a lot of videos available, video tutorials where you can follow the steps and you can do all the analysis. So you extract your article, you download your article, you do the cleaning of the articles, and then you bring them into these softwares where you can do the analysis. And now I will very briefly tell you about what these softwares actually can do. So here you see this is a basic summary of our final sample of articles. So you see here we have 284 documents. They are coming from 100 different journals. How many keywords are given by authors in this 284 article, the time period, citations information, number of authors, and all these basic information you get immediately by using this software. When we didn't have this software, we were manually calculating all these things, which were very time consuming. But now you can just do it with the clicks. And then you can also make the distribution of article, how many articles being published in different countries. So this is based on the author affiliation, and you can find out what is the distribution of articles in different countries. And then you can also make these publication trends, how this field is evolving over time. Okay, so this is publication trend. Of course, this is very useful, and you can try to identify why the researchers are more interested in that particular topic after a particular time. You can identify best papers in different time frames. So here you can see that we identified the best papers in 3 years time frame, and we can, of course, a new person who is starting to work in this area, he can go and look at these articles and try to see what is their contribution. Okay. So this is providing a kind of reference tool for the future researcher. You can identify core journals. So here in this field or in this topic, we have 5 core journals, and these 5 core journals are actually publishing 1/3 of the total publication. So remember, we have 284 total publication, and these 5 journals, which are core journals, they are publishing 1/3 of the total publications. And also you can see here that these core journals are actually getting all the citations. So 60% of citations are coming to these core journals. And then you can also identify the main journals in this area based on number of publications, based on total citations, and so on. So again, this is providing you a reference manual. Like if you are starting to work on this topic, then you can immediately go to these journals and they will provide you some good articles. You can also make these graphs where you can see how journal are publishing on this topic. For example, on this energy growth nexus, tourism economics is the main journal. They are publishing a lot of papers on this topic over time. And then you can see tourism management is also interested. So all these journals are very top journals which are publishing on this topic. And you can also make the, compare the author's productivity. For example, in this field of research, Brida is the main author who has published 14 papers on this topic, and you can find out his H index, his total citations, and when he was active or when he published his first paper. So all these information are very useful for future researchers, because then they will be able to follow these researchers for their new work. And with the help of citation analysis, you can also identify the themes of research. You can also identify the authors network, and you can also do keyword analysis, again, which will tell you what is happening in this literature. For example, this is a co-citation analysis. So co-citation analysis is basically, giving you an idea about the clusters. So again, this is being done by this software, which I usually use. And also there are many other softwares available. So here in this literature, we have 3 clusters. And in this cluster, you can identify one theme. So this, let me briefly tell you what do we mean by co-citation analysis. So let's suppose we have 2 papers, paper A and paper B. And these two papers, A and B, are actually being cited by C. So there is a link between paper A and paper B. What is that link? The link is that these two papers are being cited together by paper C, which means that there is something common between paper A and paper B. So this is giving us a theme. Similarly, if the theme will be for this paper and A and B will be having a stronger link if there are more papers citing them together. So this diagram is actually made based on this co-citation coupling or co-citation network. And then this, not only it is identifying the links between the papers, but also there are some statistical clustering being used here. And it is telling us that there are three themes actually in this literature. And you can also make the word cloud based on author's keyword. And here you can actually see different keywords being used by the author. And again, it is telling you what are the main issues in this literature. And then you can do co-word analysis. So the previous diagram is just telling you what are the keywords used, but here we are combining the keywords. So for example, if one keyword is combined with another keyword, then it is giving a better idea about the theme. So this is also very helpful to identify themes in this particular area of research. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that we can also do the content analysis in a systematic literature review. And content analysis, can be done by narrowing down the scope of the papers. For example, you can narrow down the scope by looking at top 100 papers, or maybe you say that I will only look at the papers being published in A* and A journal. So there are many different criteria which you can use to make it narrow down to small number of papers. And then you go into further details about the paper. So in this study, we looked at the content analysis of top 100 papers. And how do we select top 100 papers? Based on the citations. Okay. So if a paper is getting higher citation, it means it is getting more recognition. So we can identify top 100 papers. So what is content analysis? So content analysis is actually an approach that helps us to allow open-ended data to be categorized, explored, evaluated from a variety of the sources. So it helps us to extract the information from the published articles. And the data extraction is basically based on very well-defined criteria. You have to enter the data in Excel sheet. For example, here is the content extraction from these top 100 papers. So for example, in this literature, it is very important for future researchers to know what variables people are using for measuring tourism, what are the variables being used for measuring the income, what is the data start year, what is the data end year, what was the frequency of data being used in the study, what region or country that the study has been done. So it's a very long, Excel sheet where we have many columns, and in each column we extract the information from each paper. And I will now very briefly tell you about the results which we obtained from the content analysis. For example, in these top 100 papers, we see that 96% of the papers are empirical papers, and then we have 3% literature review paper, and we identified one meta-analysis. And then we can also see that 58% of the papers are doing empirical papers are doing time series analysis, and 38% of the papers are doing panel data analysis. And we can also find out the characteristics of the data by using this content analysis tools. So here in our sample, we have 76% of the studies have used the annual data, some studies have used quarterly data, and some studies have used monthly data. We also see the number of observation in each paper, so this is also very useful for future researchers. And we can also see, where this research has been done. For example, 47% of the paper has been done on using the global sample, 60% 16% studies has been done on Europe. So all these information are very important because then you can identify gaps in the literature. And for example, here you can see the countries where the analysis has been done. And then, as I showed you, this is very important for future researchers to know what variables has been used to measure tourism and income. So here is the result. So 51% of the studies have used the tourism expenditure or tourism earnings as a variable. Some studies have used tourism arrivals, and also there are other studies which has used other variables. Similarly, there are different variables being used for income variable. For example, some studies have used real GDP as an income variable. Some used real income, real GDP per capita. Different variables to capture the income. And then you can also find out what econometric methodology has been used. For example, the most common used methodology for panel study is panel Granger causality test, system GMM. And if you look at the time series studies, then we have these vector error correction models, and we also have the RDL model for time series studies. We can also identify the results from each study. So here you can see that, as I mentioned earlier, that there are 4 types of different hypotheses which people test, and you can find out that what are the results from these studies. For example, in Turkey, 3 studies find neutrality hypothesis between tourism and economic growth. 5 studies find out that tourism is causing economic growth, and no study found the opposite relationship. And 1 study reports that there is a feedback hypothesis that tourism is causing economic growth, and economic growth is also causing tourism. And you can see it for many different countries. So that is the end of my presentation. And so I would like to hear from you. Are you motivated to do a systematic literature review? So you can answer it now. You can choose one of the options. Okay, so most of you are, well motivated. That is very good. And of course, if you are looking for collaboration, if you have a topic, if you want to understand more, or if you want to work with me, I will be very happy to do collaborative research. And we can do online meeting where you can tell me about your topic, and then we can plan some meetings, and we can do a systematic literature review jointly. So I will be, and if you need more information, of course, you can contact me. I can send you my papers, published paper, and we can, I can provide you more information. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Professor Nisar. It has been very insightful. I will stop recording and then open the floor for discussions from the participants.